A woman walks alone under the crushing heat of a Samaritan noon. The rough, baked clay of an empty water jar digging into her shoulder. She has simply given up on the covenant of marriage altogether and settled for a scandalous arrangement. We label her the scandalous woman at the well. He does not demand that she immediately leave the only shelter keeping her alive. Instead, he brings her hidden darkness into the blinding Samaritan light. He validates her pain. He tells her that he sees exactly what the men of her city have done to her. And then, the conversation pivots, because the sixth man is not the end of the story. The ancient well motif has not been abandoned. It has simply been waiting for the right man to sit down. To understand the sheer brilliance of what the Apostle John is constructing in this text, you have to do the math. You have to count the men who have passed through this woman's life. 5 husbands who legally discarded her. 1 master who is currently using her. That makes 6. In the ancient Hebrew framework, 6 is a deeply loaded number. It is the number of human effort. It is the number of the exhausting work week, the days of sweating in the fields and pulling the heavy millstone, before the Sabbath rest finally arrives. 6 is the number of falling just short of completion. For this woman, 6 is the agonizing summary of a life spent trying to survive a system that was built to crush her. But if you look closer at the strict legal realities of the ancient Near East, at the survival economics of a first-century woman, and then she looks at the Jewish rabbi resting against the rough, sun-baked limestone. Jesus is the 7th man throughout the Gospel of John. Jesus is consistently portrayed using a very specific title. Just 1 chapter earlier, John the Baptist refers to him not as a king, and not as a warrior, but as the bridegroom. Jesus performs his very first public miracle at a wedding feast, rescuing a bride and groom from public humiliation. Now, the bridegroom has arrived at the ancient courtship altar, the well of the patriarchs. But the 7th man behaves entirely differently than the first 6. He does not demand her physical labor. He does not evaluate her worth based on her ability to bear sons. He does not hold a papyrus certificate of divorce in his hand, ready to banish her the moment she fails him. He is not another master looking for a transaction. He is the true bridegroom, offering a covenant. For a woman whose entire existence has been defined by anxiety, wondering where her next meal will come from. Wondering if the 6th man will throw her onto the street before the winter rains. Wondering how to avoid the stinging whispers of the townswomen, the concept of rest is completely foreign. She is spiritually and physically exhausted. At the very specific vocabulary Jesus chooses to use in the Greek text, you start to see a reality that the sinner reading completely ignores. The 6 men have drained her completely. But the number 7, the Sabbath, represents the end of striving. When Jesus asks her for a drink of water, it is the opening line of a divine courtship. He is inviting her out of the brutal economy of the 6 men and into the perfect rest of the 7th. He speaks of living water that will bypass her parched throat and become a literal spring welling up inside her chest, washing away the dirt of a staid lifetime of public rejection. He offers her a permanent name that cannot be stripped away by the scratch of a quill or the whims of an angry man. The 7th man does not take. He gives. And the sheer shock of this realization that she is seen, known, and fiercely chosen by the Messiah himself produces an immediate physical reaction. It causes her to do something entirely irrational with the one object she brought to the well. The conversation reaches its climax. "I who speak to you am he," Jesus says. A heavy silence falls over the well. The scorching midday wind seems to stop. She looks at the Jewish rabbi. She looks at her calloused hands. And then, she turns. She begins to run. But she does not run back the way she came. She does not sneak along the edges of the dirt road. The 5 husbands are not a record of her promiscuity. They are a record of her rejection. Jesus is not exposing a woman's shameful past. She does not hide her face from the incoming travelers. And she does not bring the heavy clay vessel with her. The Gospel of John inserts a detail so small you might read right past it. Verse 28 says, "Then, leaving her water jar. The woman went back to the town. The jar rests on the rough limestone edge of the well. The sun bakes the wet clay. This is not a lapse in memory. It is a total resignation from a former life. The water jar was the instrument of her daily, exhausting survival. It was the reason she was standing in the brutal heat at the 6th hour. It was the physical manifestation of her shame. Now, she abandons it. She leaves the heavy, endless cycle of drawing water to appease the masters. She sprints toward the heavy stone gates of Sychar. Her lungs burn. Her sandals kick up clouds of white dust. She bursts into the town square, and look at exactly who she speaks to. She does not seek out the other marginalized women. She does not retreat to the shadowy, outcast corners of the marketplace. She goes directly to the men. John uses the Greek phrase tous anthropos, the men of the city. The elders sitting in the gates, the husbands, the fathers, the very men who wrote the certificates of divorce, the very men who negotiated her meager dowries, the very men who treated her like damaged goods and threw her out onto the street. She stands in front of her abusers. She does not lower her eyes. She does not whisper. She shouts, "Come. See a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? The hiding is over. The shame is shattered." The men who discarded her 5 times are now listening to her testify. They are dropping their tools. They are standing up. They are following her back out into the heat. The anti-bride has become the first evangelist. She left a heavy, empty vessel at the well, and she became a vessel pouring out living water over the driest city in Samaria. But that well is not locked in the ancient world. The clay jar still sits on the edge of the ancient well, drying in the afternoon sun. But the reality of that well is not locked in a first-century desert. We are a species exhausted by our own survival strategies. We do not carry hemp ropes and clay vessels to limestone shafts at high noon, but we carry the exact same exhaustion, passed around, and legally tossed aside by men who held absolutely all the legal power. He is looking at a woman who has survived a lifetime. We carry the crushing weight of trying to prove we have value in systems designed to discard us the moment we stop producing. Think about the masters we serve. We give our best hours to the corporate ladder, terrified that a single mistake or a bad quarter will result in the modern equivalent of a certificate of divorce. We bring our deepest insecurities to the cold glow of a glass screen at 2 in the morning, swiping through curated faces, hoping someone will validate our existence with a temporary burst of digital attention. We engage in transactional relationships where affection is measured, negotiated, and quietly withdrawn the second we become a burden. The 6 husbands are not just ancient history. They are the relentless, transactional masters of our modern age. They are the coping mechanisms we drag ourselves toward when we feel the heavy, familiar knot of isolation in our stomachs. They are the quiet addictions we nurse. They are the endless drive for status that promises to finally make us acceptable, but always demands just a little more of our soul before it pays out. We keep drawing from wells that leave us deeply, desperately parched. We settle for the 6th man because the fear of being truly alone is louder than the pain of being used, of abandonment. And he is naming a trauma that most people do not even realize she carries. To find the truth of what is actually happening, we stay in the shadows, avoiding the cool morning draw, navigating crowded rooms and busy streets while carrying an invisible, crushing isolation. We assume this is just how the world works. We assume we are damaged goods, defined by the relationships that failed, the careers that stalled, and the silent rejections that piled up over the years. We become convinced that our only option is a lifetime of management, managing the pain, managing the appearance, managing the heavy jar. But the architecture of this story completely dismantles that assumption. The narrative of John 4 refuses to leave humanity trapped in a cycle of transactional exhaustion. It points directly toward a disruption of the entire system. Because the 7th man did not get up from the well, when the Samaritan woman ran back to the city, he remained seated at the marriage altar. And the invitation he extended to a broken, discarded outcast under the burning heat of an ancient sun is the exact same invitation hanging in the air right now. A patriarch rolled away a stone and a covenant of marriage began. 5 certificates of divorce were written, and a woman was cast out into the dust. A 6th man demanded her labor, and the daily draw became an economic hostage situation. The sun reached its blistering peak. At this well, you have to step back into the brutal, unequal reality of ancient marriage. You have to understand what it meant to be, and the isolation she sought became her only sanctuary. A Jewish rabbi asked for water, and centuries of racial hostility shattered. The word Aner was spoken, and a lifetime of being treated as property was finally brought into the light. The 7th bridegroom offered living water, and the empty clay vessel was left behind forever. Same well, same thirst. One true bridegroom. But here's the part I keep coming back to. The jar. She left the heavy, cracked clay jar resting right there on the limestone edge of Jacob's well. It is not a forgotten detail. It is a monument of her liberation. The men in the gates who handed her those 5 pieces of parchment thought they had defined her worth forever. But the 7th man looked at her, saw every brutal scar of her survival, and gave her an identity that no earthly master could ever take away. If you are in a season where you feel completely exhausted by the systems you are trying to survive, if you wake up every day carrying a heavy jar to a well that never actually satisfies, whether it is an industry that drains you, a transactional relationship that uses you, or a quiet, lingering fear that you are permanently damaged goods, hear this. You do not have to keep proving your worth to the masters, who will only discard you when you stop producing. If this shifted something in you, subscribe. To leave a comment, even one word helps. A woman without a man, in a world where your literal survival depended on belonging to one. Because the deepest tragedy of this woman's life, share this with someone who feels like they are standing alone at high noon. Pray for us as we keep digging into these ancient texts. And may the God who meets us in our most isolated, blistering hours, the God who sees every hidden scar of our survival, step into your midday heat and offer you living water that will never run dry, is not the 5 husbands she lost. It is the grim reality of the 6th man she is currently living with. Sweat stings her eyes. The dirt road is completely empty. She is not coming to Jacob's well at this hour because it is convenient. A piece of parchment is handed over. A few copper coins are counted. A door is shut. In the ancient Near East, a woman does not hold the power of the pen. She cannot write a certificate of divorce. Under the widespread legal interpretations of the 1st century, a husband can sever a marriage for almost any reason. A burnt dinner, a ruined tunic, a loud argument in the courtyard, a failure to produce a male heir. The scratch of ink on a papyrus scroll is all it takes. The woman is handed the document. She gathers her few woven garments. She walks out into the blinding sun, heading back to her family in absolute disgrace. This is the brutal math of her world. This was not a system of mutual partnership. It was an economy of ownership. When we read that the Samaritan woman had 5 husbands, our modern minds project modern autonomy onto her. We assume she is the one leaving. We assume she is the one breaking vows and destroying homes. But ancient women do not collect husbands. They survive them. To have 5 husbands means one of 2 devastating realities. Either she is trapped in a horrific streak of widowhood, watching man after man lowered into the cold, rocky soil. Or, more likely, she is barren. She is coming at the 6th hour high noon, because the blistering glare of the sun on the sand is easier to bear. She cannot produce a child, and so she is passed along. Husband 1 realizes her womb is empty. He writes a certificate and casts her out. Husband 2 tries, fails, and sends her away. Husband 3, husband 4, husband 5. She is treated like damaged goods in a marketplace. Her only value is tied to her ability to bear sons. A woman without a husband in this world is a woman without a safety net. She cannot simply go into town and apply for a job. She cannot buy a plot of land. If her father is dead, and she has no grown brothers to take her in, she is entirely reliant on the reluctant charity of distant relatives. She is a financial burden. She is a social outcast. She is a whisper in the dusty streets. So she tries again. She marries the next man who will take her. Perhaps an older man. Perhaps a poorer man. She settles for less and less security each time. The dowry shrinks. The wedding celebrations get quieter. The whispered gossip grows louder. 5 times the canopy is raised. 5 times it falls. 5 times she prepares a home. 5 times she is told to leave it. The 5 husbands are not her scandal. They are her scars. Every number represents a public rejection. Every number represents a sudden loss of income, shelter, and dignity. By the time she reaches the well, then the whispering and the sideways glances of the other women at the cool morning draw. She expects the comfort of total isolation. She is deeply, fundamentally broken by a system designed to discard her. But the detail that changes everything is where this exact conversation happens. The heat shimmers and waves off the Samaritan sand. The deep shaft of Jacob's well drops 100 feet into the dark limestone, holding water so cold it beads on the outside of a clay jar. Jesus sits on the stone edge, waiting. In the ancient Hebrew imagination, a well is never just a place to get a drink. It is a stage. It is the place where a nation is built. When an ancient Jewish reader hears the words, "a man and a woman meet at a well," a very specific literary alarm goes off in their mind. They know the pattern. They have heard it since childhood. A servant travels to a well in Haran, prays for a sign, and finds Rebekah, a bride for Isaac. A fugitive named Jacob flees to a well in Paddan Aram, heaves a massive stone from its mouth, and finds Rachel. A runaway prince named Moses escapes to a well in Midian, fights off hostile shepherds, and finds Zipporah. The pattern is woven into the very fabric of the Torah. The well is not a random landmark. It is the ancient marriage altar. But as she approaches, she finds a Jewish man sitting quietly on the stone edge of the well. You have probably heard this story. It is the place where the patriarchs meet their brides. It is the place where covenants are struck in the dust and water seals the promise. Now, Jesus sits at Jacob's well. A Samaritan woman approaches. Anyone reading John's Gospel in the 1st century feels the narrative tension pulling tight. The backdrop is perfectly set. The ancient courtship motif is activated. A Jewish man is sitting at a well in a foreign land, and a woman walks up to draw water. We expect a wedding. But the rhythm completely shatters. The patriarchs met young women in the cool of the morning, surrounded by flocks and family. This woman comes alone at the agonizing peak of noon. The patriarchs met women who ran home to tell their fathers to prepare a feast. This woman has no father protecting her, no family covering her, no feast waiting to be prepared. The patriarchs met brides, untouched by the world. This woman walks to the well carrying the heavy, invisible wreckage of 5 failed marriages. She is the anti-bride. Yet Jesus does not leave the well. He does not pack up and walk to the next town. He stays seated on the marriage altar of his ancestors, looking directly at the most unmarriageable woman in Samaria. It echoes through the pews again and again. Jesus asks for a drink, breaking the deep racial hostility between Jews and Samaritans. Who has forgotten how to be chosen? But he knows he cannot heal the wound until he names it. And to do that, he asks a single question. A question that pivots on a specific, deeply loaded word in the original language. In John chapter 4, verse 16, the conversation abruptly shifts. Jesus looks at the woman and issues a simple instruction. Go. Call your husband and come back. She replies, staring down at the cracked stone edge of the well. I have no husband. And then Jesus delivers the sentence that has defined her for 2 millennia. He says, you are right. You have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. To feel the true weight of this exchange, you have to bypass the English translation and listen to the heavy phonetic strike of the Greek text resting underneath. The word our English Bibles translate as husband here is the Greek aner. It appears hundreds of times in the New Testament. The noun aner can certainly mean a lawfully wedded husband, but It has a much wider, more fluid range of meaning. It is also the generic, everyday Greek word for simply a man, any adult male. When Jesus speaks to her, the text literally translates as, "You have had 5 men, and the man you now have is not your man." And then he miraculously reads her life history. He tells her she has had 5 husbands, and the man she is living with. To grasp why he uses this ambiguous word, we must look at the Hebrew concepts both Jesus and this Samaritan woman inherited. In ancient Israel, the legal relationship of marriage was frequently defined by the Hebrew word Baal, meaning master, lord, or owner. A wife was essentially property, subjected entirely to the whims of her Baal. But centuries earlier, the prophet Hosea penned a profound promise to a broken, outcast people who had been used and abused. In Hosea 2:6, God declares to his people, "In that day, you will call me Ishi, my husband, and you will no longer call me Baali, my master." Ishi is the word for a companion, an intimate partner. Baali is the word for a slave driver. If recognizing how the original languages completely dismantle the assumptions we carry into the Bible is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week, we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So, Jesus sits at the well and addresses the Baali in her life. That linguistic context changes everything about how we read this scene. Jesus is not reading a rap sheet of her sexual sins to prove his prophetic credentials. He is summarizing a lifetime of being treated as property, passed from one owner to another. He is naming the men who acquired her. Right now is not her husband. Most people read that and immediately assume she is a woman of ill repute, a serial adulterer, the men who discarded her, and the devastating reality of her current survival strategy. The list of 5 is not an indictment of her promiscuity. It is a diagnosis of her absolute destitution. She has survived 5 men who claimed ownership over her and then threw her away. But the tragedy does not stop with the 5. It is the 6th man, the man she is currently sharing a roof with, that reveals the true depth of her desperation. The number hangs in the dry air. 5. She stands perfectly still. The rough hemp rope of the water bucket burns against her calloused hands. A Jewish rabbi has just laid bare the exact architecture of her shame. He knows about the 5 written certificates. He knows about the 5 public rejections. And then he names the present. The man you now have is not your husband. Most readers stop right here and see a lecture on morality. But look closely at her reality. She has completely run out of options. She is older now. Her dowry is drained. Her social standing is shattered. No respectable family in Sychar will ever write a marriage contract for a woman who has been discarded 5 times. So she accepts an arrangement of absolute surrender. She moves into the shadow of a 6th man's roof. She sweeps his dirt floor. She grinds his barley. She draws his water. She bakes his bread. She gives him her labor. She gives him her body. And in return, she gets just enough food to survive the winter. A seductress who goes through men so recklessly, leaving a trail of broken homes, that by the time she meets Jesus, but he will not marry her. He will not go to the town elders at the gates and claim her. He will not legally bind himself to a ruined, barren woman. She is entirely expendable. If she gets sick, she is out on the street. If she displeases him, she is gone by nightfall. This is not a scandalous romance. It is an economic hostage situation. Every village in the ancient world has a woman like this. The woman nobody invites to the harvest feast. The woman who walks alone at the blistering hour of high noon. She is the cautionary tale whispered by mothers to young girls at the morning draw. The arrangement is not an act of rebellion. It is the final, desperate breath of a drowning woman. Jesus sits by the heavy stones of Jacob's well and stares directly into this crushing reality. He sees the transactional nightmare she wakes up to every single morning. He sees the invisible bruises left by a culture that treats women like rented property. By all cultural rules, He should spit on the ground. He should gather his clean linen robes, step away from the contaminated well, and walk back to Judea. But Jesus does not move. He does not look away. He does not quote the law of Moses to condemn her, just to prove he is a prophet. He is diagnosing a profound, systemic wound. He is reaching into the chest of someone who has been discarded. He is stepping into the ancient script of courtship, but he is rewriting the characters. He is pursuing a bride.